Welcome to the Inside Silverstone podcast, a business-focused podcast covering all things tech, engineering and innovation. Hosted by me, Chris Broome, a huge tech, motorsport and gaming fan, and also the owner of Longhurst, a firm of lifestyle financial planners and independent financial advisors located in Silverstone, Northamptonshire. This is a series of unscripted and unpolished conversations with leading business owners, thought leaders and high-tech talent where we discuss their experiences within the Silverstone business and motorsport region. We will also be asking them to share their knowledge, insight and their thoughts on the future just for you. If you're looking to learn more about the Silverstone high growth region and commercially connect with like-minded peers, you've definitely come to the right place. Welcome to Inside Silverstone. Welcome to the next edition of Inside Silverstone. My name is Chris Broome and I am your host today. I am delighted to finally welcome to the show well-known individual on site, Simon Dowson from Delta Motorsport. Simon, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Chris. Really glad to be involved.
Good. And thank you for coming on. Simon, as I always explain at the beginning of these shows, it is customary of me to run through a quick sort of education and career snapshot, just so that we can basically demonstrate to our good listeners why we asked you to come on, and basically your sort of journey from the beginning to where you are now as MD of Delta Motorsport. So is that okay if I quickly run through that with you?
Yeah, no problem.
Cool. So I've basically got all of this off Google and LinkedIn. And so if any of this is incorrect, do correct me clearly. So education-wise, you've got an engineering degree from the University of Warwick, just up the road.
Yeah.
And then career-wise, basically began your career at Reynard Motorsport, which used to be the largest race car manufacturer basically in the UK or even potentially the world, but certainly the UK. That's right?
Yeah. We were up there with the likes of Lola Cars, who were probably a more established name, but Reynard came in the sort of late 80s and was a real challenger for the race car industry in terms of a car constructor. Yeah,
I mean, I've read up to Formula Ford, Formula 3, British Touring Car, IndyCar, so clearly, not just the UK but also the US.
Yeah,
very, very successful. So that's basically where you sort of cut your teeth. And then 2002 happened, which is where sort of Reynard was no more. And basically everybody sort of went their separate ways and left. And so you had a sort of short stint at Oxford Racing Developments from sort of 02 to 05. And then basically in 05 took the sort of big, brave step to set your own business up.
Yeah, so from a Reynard perspective, that's where I first met my current business partner, Nick Carpenter. Mm-hmm. So in the late 90s, we were both working on the IndyCar Champ Car program for America. Nick, one of the senior design engineers, and myself on the operations side of things. And Reynard was a really great place to work. I went there as a graduate. Didn't really know at that time what I wanted to do, and did I want to get into design or where was I best suited? And the Reynard scholarship, as it was, basically gave you an opportunity to go around all of the different departments and understand a little bit more about what was involved in the race car construction industry.
Yeah.
And Adrian was very smart, so they had plenty of people apply, but he almost charged you for the privilege. So we were getting paid like £57 a week as a graduate. And I found my sort of niche in more sort of production and operation, really. Much more suited to my skills. I didn't want to sit behind a CAD station all the time. And just a good team of people to work with, young, motivated, old guys also motivated for a common cause, which is, what we've tried to do here at Delta as well is mimic the good parts of Reynard that we've both experienced.
And in relation to Delta, so for those that may not have heard of Delta Motorsport before, What do you guys do? What do you sort of specialise in? What's your sort of niche and your sort of sweet spot?
Well, it's changed over the years significantly. So when we started in 2005, it was very much a motorsport focus still.
Yeah.
But then we felt really that a lot of the championships were becoming one make, opportunities to innovate were really diminishing. So what do we do, and what is that as a potential growth platform for the business? So we started looking at the low carbon sector around automotive primarily.
Even back then.
Yeah. Mainly because we had a project that came to us that was a guy looking to do a little hydrogen fuel cell taxi vehicle, and he was able to get some grant funding from the government to support his new technology as it was driving down CO2 emissions. So we thought, okay, maybe that's an area we should look at as a potential growth area for the business. And so yeah, we started in 2007 with a feasibility study on, okay, who's out there in low carbon vehicles, so primarily electric and hybrid vehicles. And a lot of searching, but not a lot came back really. Very, very few people into that tech at the time.
Yeah, back then. Yeah.
Tesla with the Roadster was the sort of standout part of it. Most other manufacturer programs had been canned. So, we were like, okay, clearly an opportunity. So we said, okay, well, let's see if we were doing our own car, what would it look like? So we met with some guys we knew in the automotive industry, talk about how fast does it need to go, how many seats does it need to have, which was interesting, and there were different answers than what we thought. So we started drawing a car which was basically around our motorsport principles of, okay, it needs to be as light as it can, because then it uses less energy. It needs to be as aerodynamically efficient as it can, because then it uses less energy. So we take those principles forward, and then along the way we start learning about battery systems, we start learning about control systems for the vehicle. We end up designing an electric motor with some guys from Oxford University. They take a spin-out business called Yasa Motors, which is a successful motor manufacturer now. Yeah. We have a license agreement with them for part of our design that we patented back then.
Nice.
So it answered a few questions, but it raised a hell of a lot more, really. But it opened our eyes to the opportunities that existed in that area.
And did that then lead to you actually building a vehicle?
Yeah, we built our first vehicle in 2009.
Okay, cool.
It was targeted at a competition in America. So that vehicle, we had some support to do that. So not only good partners that we were working with, but we also had some funding from the East Midlands Development Agency. We got a grant for $250,000 to help us build the car.
Nice, good.
Which was, way under what it needed. We needed good partners. We had a composite company called KS Composites we worked with. They supported us on tooling costs. We had the materials manufacturer for the composite materials supporting us because we were developing new tech there to press mold composite panels.
And these are all partners within sort of Silverstone or around the region?
They're around the region, yeah. East Midlands region.
Yeah.
And then we built a car. We were heading towards a competition called the Automotive X Prize, like the SpaceX Prize. Had a $10 million first prize, so the competitive element of us was charged by that.
Yeah.
And we one of the milestone deadlines was to have a car built and running by a certain date. We did an all-nighter to build the car, stood back, there it is, great, had it running. And then the motor guys said, we want to do some updates. And they did the updates, and we lifted the car a little bit, ran the car, and we had an inverter failure, dead short. and we'd cut a few corners at that time in order to get the car running, and some of the fusing that we had in place was basically to protect the battery. So some of the subsystems, when they had failures, it meant that you had a fire,
right?
And we couldn't put that fire out, so we basically had to evacuate and pretty much destroyed the whole building.
So this is the infamous fire that I've been told about. So this is all about a competition, obviously just trying to meet the deadline for this comp.
Yeah.
That was the reason why basically the corner was cut, as it were. As you said, normally that wouldn't happen. Clearly.
And there was a bit of, it wasn't just that, there was a bit of naivety in it as well. We're doing new stuff. And it wasn't necessarily just cutting corners. We thought we'd covered it off. It was just not really knowing enough about what we needed to do. So a valuable lesson that we've taken forward.
Do you think that you would have won or got anywhere near the top? Presumably,
we thought we had a good shot.
Yeah,
especially when you see what people did, and we went on to build 5 cars in 2011 for a technology demonstrator program, exactly the same, but with more safety systems in them. And and we still use those as technology demonstrators today. So
there we are.
It was, we were on the right track.
Sure.
But yeah, it was pretty devastating at the time. But we were lucky. We had good insurance. We were able to get operational within sort of 4 days, only sort of 2 working days out on site. And we rebuilt and we started again.
Brush yourself down and pull your socks up and learn and move forward.
Yeah, shed a few tears. But
I'm sure, but nobody was hurt, which is the main thing. And sort of just life continued and the project sort of continued.
Yeah.
And what was the vehicle called? Did it have a name?
It's called the E4 Coupe.
Okay,
yeah.
Fine. Okay, so when we're done with the interview, we'll have to show me that.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks, Simon. Okay, and so in relation to sort of products and solutions that Delta sort of work on, so I've had a quick look at the website, so we can sort of touch on these and just let me know if I've missed anything off here. So we've got things like battery systems, control systems, drive chains, lightweight structures, simulation, which is interesting, and also full vehicle programs. And so the full vehicle program in part would be the E4 Coupe, I guess, from start to finish. Any others there that of note?
There is not too many we can talk about, unfortunately. But
fine, of course.
But yeah, I mean that we would sort of class ourselves as we take headaches away from people, and over the years things have changed. We've gone from, like I say, motorsport to primarily automotive, and now we would say we're an engineering solutions provider, but we sort of take headaches away from people.
I like that.
And we try and add some extra value to that as well. It's not just about solving the problems, it's helping our customers identify a little bit more about what those problems actually are, especially around electric and hybrid, which is fundamentally what we do now. Most of the projects we do are around some form of electrification, hybridization. We still do some internal combustion engine, but ironically, we don't do any motorsport at the moment. I think that'd be surprising to people. I think because obviously the genesis from Reynard to being on Silverstone Park, the natural expectation I had when I walked in, actually, if I'm honest, being completely honest, was that you'd still be involved in it. So it's refreshing to hear actually that you're not. Yeah, and we don't help ourselves because we're still called Delta Motorsport. But, and I think it's we're only fairly recently not had any involvement. Up until sort of 2017, we were still supporting race teams primarily in America. And it's the conscious decision is more around the future for the business, and I think the motorsport activity will come back. But probably as our technology develops and gets to a point that its cost is acceptable within motorsport, then we'll have a link back in there. And if somebody came along and wanted us to do a motorsport program, we'd certainly look at it, but it would need to be a proper program, properly funded, and one that doesn't distract from from what the core of the business is currently, which is very easy to do with a motorsport because it's bright and shiny and
makes lots of noise.
You get drawn in and so you've got to be careful.
Sensible. And I saw down in the reception a nice window sill full of awards, and so MIA awards and over the many years, so presumably very proud of that, and that's a clear testament to the learning and the iterative process that you go through to develop these solutions. And
yeah, very much so. You know, I think both Nick and myself and the guys working here are, you know, we like the engineering challenges. It's a different discipline to the motorsport where your competition starts at the weekend and finishes at the weekend. We have now programs that are very challenging, but they might last 2 years. But at the end of it, we want the guys to stand back and be proud of what they've produced, which they are. You know, take a lot of pride in what we're doing and enjoyment around the variety. We're not doing things that are boring by any means. They're all exciting engineering challenges. So,
and hopefully shaping the future for us in relation to autonomous vehicles and, you know, EV and powertrains and making things, you know, last longer and more efficiently, and, you know, for a consumer, which I am, you know, of these products, and certainly moving forward, so, you know, autonomous vehicles, but certainly electric vehicles, it's good, reassuring.
Yeah, and it's enjoyable for us to try and educate people as well, because when you think of a battery system, it's difficult to get out of your head, you know, an AA or a AAA or something like that, and you know, and fundamentally that's what it is, just a lot of them. Slightly bigger, but yeah, just and massive. You know, the whole floor pan of the car is battery, and you think, wow, that is like. But even when you see it, and this is the biggest thing that we have to keep reminding ourselves, is you see a big battery and you go, wow, that's really big, but you don't get a feeling for how much energy is actually contained in it. It's not like petrol. It doesn't smell. There's nothing. It just looks like a big mass. But the amount of energy it contains, and obviously it needs to deliver it from a vehicle, but it means it's pretty volatile as well. So you have to respect it significantly. And, you know, we've been on the backside of it, so we now are very respectful of it. But yeah, really, really interesting. And I think, you know, I've only myself been driving an electric car for a year, but it's you know, very different. It's really nice, comfortable to drive, easy, but the plugging in thing is a bit of a pain. Planning not just what you're doing on that day, but the next day, because of your charging behaviour, is all very different. So yeah, socially we've got to adapt quite a bit in order to be ready for it.
But, you know, clearly moving forward years to come, that'll become easier, and, you know, batteries presumably will become, I guess, in many, many years to come, slightly smaller and eventually down to perhaps.
I mean,
who knows with science and technology.
One of the things we've been working on is our own range extender, because when we built the car, we were like, wow, couldn't really get over the size and mass of the battery and how relative little distance you travelled on it. So we then started looking at developing our own range extender, so an onboard generator to charge the battery while you're driving along. It can't keep up with the level of demand that you take out of it if you're doing standard drive cycle work, A roads, onto dual carriageways, motorways, but it can extend your mileage, probably double the mileage. That's a journey we're still on, but we think that's the first step for people. The transition is, I don't want to go full EV, I'll have a hybrid. And you know, there's so many, and this is the thing, I've had people ask me, you know, I want to go that route, but I don't know what's out there. You know, what are all the different vehicles and cars, and you got plug-in hybrids, you got parallel hybrid, series hybrid. It's just confusing in the marketplace. And, you know, a plug-in hybrid might have a battery range of only 30 miles, which on a cold day might only be 15 miles. Before then, the petrol engine kicks in, and then you've got a petrol engine hauling around a battery system and all the other subsystems involved in it, whether you've got electric motors in the system or not.
Yeah, how efficient is that?
Seem that right?
Yeah.
But it's that first step, and you know, we have to consider that the automotive manufacturers have a huge amount of legacy with engine plants and people and production. That's not going to shift overnight. And you know, the price you could build an engine for versus supply a battery pack, there's a significant difference there. And as consumers, are we going to tolerate that big cost price? No. So how does that model work for people? And that's, you know, a challenge that fortunately we don't have to deal with as a business. Our step is to look at how do we produce technologies that ease that by, as you say, how do we make smaller, more efficient battery systems that cost less. But as consumers, we all have to still deal with it for now.
Yeah. And this neatly leads on the fact that you're clearly innovating and thinking like this. It neatly leads on to what I read on the website, and I've seen in the press anyway, regarding your recent sort of Grant Thornton Faces of Vibrant Economy piece, which I say with a smile on your face.
Yeah.
So so presumably that's where they've just recognised and acknowledged that you're doing good and that you're leading from the front, and they, you know, want to help promote what you're doing so that you can encourage others to sort of follow suit.
Yeah, there's a lot of that in there, and there's we had the opportunity to go down and meet a number of other people that were put forward by Grant Thornton across many different industries, and see some of the great work that they're doing. Yeah, I did joke with the staff here and said, well, you know, if this is the face of a vibrant economy with all my stress lines and grey hair, is that really what you want? It's
metaphorical speaking, the face of it.
That's right. But yeah, I mean, great for Nick and myself to have that and be recognised by Grant Thornton is really good, and really just a reflection of the work that the staff here do more than anything else.
Yeah, of course.
So
pat on the back for everybody.
Yeah, very much so.
Partnerships, collaboration. Again, I've read got some autonomous collaboration projects on the go at the moment. I'm not sure if you can sort of talk about them, but at least we can sort of touch on them. So I've read Gordon Murray Design, and also one in partnership with Innovate UK, Titan, and Alcon.
Yeah, so collaboration is a massive part of our business and really important to the growth of the business. We've always been very open with people in terms of what we're doing, because we don't claim to know everything by any means. So we need experts in their fields or industries in order to support the work that we want to get into, to allow us to understand more. And we benefit from a number of collaborative R&D programs, which are generally co-funded by Innovate UK, which is a government arm for driving innovation, mainly in low carbon area. And also the Advanced Propulsion Centre, and you've got connected autonomous vehicle programs as well. And we really look at these collaborative R&D projects at multiple levels. One is it gives us an opportunity to look at new things that we've never been involved with before, develop new products, IP, knowledge, know-how that we can then apply to customer programs going forward. Secondly, it gives us a introduction to some big companies that we wouldn't normally be able to work with. So big mainstream manufacturers get involved in these projects, and we get the opportunity as a small business to work with them. We get a supplier number, we get recognised, they understand how we work and where we can add value, and then when they get commercial opportunities come along, it's an easy introduction to us because we're a known partner.
Yeah, trusted. Yeah.
And we, every quarter we have program meetings or weekly meetings. So there's a touch point, a regular touch point. So there's a bit of marketing support in there as well. So many different reasons, and the collaborations with people like Gordon Murray and Titan and Alcon are looking at the next steps around the autonomy side of things. We're obviously fully embedded in doing electrification, but it's like, okay, well, we do a lot of vehicle control system work. So vehicle dynamics control. Now we've got opportunities to interact with the steering, the braking, the electric motors, and how that affects the vehicle. You take that forward to autonomy and say, okay, well, maybe the driver is not us, it's the computer. What do we need to do? And with Gordon Murray Design, it's very much focused around a single occupant pod. So when we look at how we journey to work or to the shops, how do we do that in the future? Is it a multi-person occupancy thing?
Yeah, who knows?
Or is it one person? Do we want to travel with people we don't know, or do we want to travel on our own? And when you look at congestion and talk about the cars on the road and how many of them are just occupied by one or two people rather than four or five.
Inefficient.
So that program, supported by Innovate UK, with Gordon Murray Design, and we're doing the sort of powertrain element of it, so batteries, vehicle dynamics control, and motor inverter package for it. Gordon Murray doing the chassis using some of their latest technology, and producing something that's safe to go on the road as a single occupant. The work with Titan and Alcon is looking ourselves at what we can deliver as a platform. And Alcon, well known for braking systems, and we've bought product from them before, but this is our first collaborative working program together, and all three of us obviously are members of the Motorsport Industry Association, which is a nice step from people away from motorsport. Titan do a lot of steering systems. They wanted to develop their portfolio projects into being able to have their own power assisted steering with a separate controller that we can work with. So yeah, that one's taking shape, and we're going to look to launch something at the Low Carbon Vehicle Show later this year.
Okay.
To show people a little bit about what we're doing. But
so on your website, there's an awesome video that introduces your business. Love it as a production. I think it's very, very good. But there's a scene in there where there is, I presume, a Red E4 coupe going around and sort of doing donuts and figures of eights with a chap using a sort of joystick, as it were. Is that part of what this is, or it's in part? That's
the vehicle dynamics control part of it. So, and these are the tunes you can play when you've on that particular car is all-wheel drive. So it's got 4 independent electric machines, one of each, or one driving each wheel. And when people talk about torque vectoring, and you think, okay, well, what does that actually mean?
What does that mean?
Basically, if you think about the fact that if you were going around a corner, the inside wheel and the outside wheel are travelling at different speeds. So when we've got control of each of those wheels independently, it means we can affect the speed of them independently. So when at the moment, if you apply the steering to a car, you might get an element of scrub because the wheels are maybe travelling at the same speed, or the differential deals with some of it, but the wheels are travelling at the same speed, but they want to be at different speeds because you're going around a corner. So you get an element of scrub, which is obviously a loss of energy and also tyre wear, reduced grip. Whereas now, if we go, actually, we can slow one wheel down and we can speed the other one up to make it more efficient. Suddenly you can change your dynamics of the car, so you can apply a steering and the car knows, okay, we've got that amount of steering, that means I'm going to slow this wheel down, speed this one up, and your cornering capability is much more sharp and direct.
Yeah, and efficient.
Yeah. So the vehicle dynamics control is that. In terms of road, as you develop further into race, obviously there's greater opportunities there, but the joystick control is basically hands off the steering wheel. We have no direct input to the steering. All we're doing is differentiating the torque from one side of the car to the other, and that is then making the car steer for us. So the joystick just is a good way of illustrating that to people. Because otherwise conceptually it's quite hard to understand unless you're the one driving and understanding there's less steering effort required. But
yeah, it's good. As I said, the video is great. So for those listening, check out the Delta Motorsport website and you'll see it on the I think it's the home page.
Yeah.
Cool. And so that's great promotion of collaboration, which then very neatly brings me on to sort of Silverstone Park and the Silverstone Technology Cluster. So we're sat in your office opposite Silverstone Race Circuit, opposite the Innovation Centre, which is slap bang in the middle of Silverstone Park. So presumably having the postcode and the name's great for business, but I guess actually probably more importantly to that, actually being part of the business community here is pivotal and vital for your business and growth and in the future of what you're trying to do.
Yeah, and it's come a long way, and fortunately, MEPC got involved at a good time for us. I've been around this area a long time. And when we set up the business here, and it was Silverstone Circuits, they were hampered by what they could do financially. It still worked well for us, but the MEPC have really raised the level, not just of the park and the type of obviously investing in businesses and infrastructure and facilities. It's bringing new businesses, which allow us to look at how we collaborate with those. It's very much a technology-driven park, and not only just the work they do directly here, but the exposure that we get through the Silverstone Technology Cluster and things like that is all just highlighting this area to people, not just within the UK, but outside of the UK. So. We can all benefit from that. Generally, the businesses on the park are reasonably small, so we're not going to be out there doing mass marketing campaigns, but somebody on our doorstep is doing it for us.
Yeah.
So it's really good, and they listen, which is nice. They don't. And they'll tell you what things they'll act on and not act on. And I remember when MEPC first got involved, and we talked about the community. I remember back from when my father had his business here, it was very much a community, and people worked together and looked out for one another. And how do we bring that back? And MEPC have really tried through a lot of the activities they do to try and do that. And to, I think it makes a difference.
Well, I think professionally and sort of socially they do, don't they? So, Ros and Ruth and Pim clearly as part of the STC, big advocates for making sure they connect the dots between certain businesses, not just through inverted commas the networking events and the special interest groups, but other sort of professional events as well, which is fantastic. Which is how we've sort of met through attending a number of sort of regional events, but also socially. They if it's not just for the business owners, but for the employees and the teams here. Ultimately the families, the people that are building the businesses. From quiz nights to sports events to whatever sports day I think got called off because of the rain, but I would concur. I think the work they're doing here is fantastic, and the good thing is all the businesses so far that I've met, and certainly ones I've interviewed, but the ones I'm, in fact, Longhurst are working with from a business perspective, all say exactly the same as you. That it's good, and the future's bright, which is the main thing.
Yeah, and we it's a nice environment for people to come and work in.
Yeah.
Around the park, it's smart, it's professional. We personally like the noise of the circuit.
Well, yesterday was phenomenal. We had Red Bull testing here yesterday, so it was. I had a couple of interviews and meetings here, and brilliant walking outside and listening to it. Yeah,
and I think when we bring clients or potential clients here, they're excited to come to Silverstone and see what it's all about.
And I think once the Silverstone experience is open as well, which I think is happening in spring or so, I think that will be another reason for people to come here. So cool. Well, that's a really useful piece of information and discussion regarding Delta, a piece on Reynard, and the sort of genesis for basically from opening your business. But actually, what I'd really love to understand is the genesis behind actually your sort of love and passion for originally for sort of motorsport, whether it be from a technical perspective or from a competitive perspective, through to then obviously opening a company. So from what I've just heard, so your father ran a business here, so presumably that means that you've sort of were living and have lived around Silverstone?
Yeah. So I think it was I moved from Leamington when I was about 8 or 9. First lived in Towcester, went to school in Towcester, before then moving when I was about 11 to Silverstone.
Okay.
But I went to school at Spawn in Towcester. My father's business, which was based up here for about 40 years.
Wow.
So
Wow.
I pretty much know every inch of the circuit because I walked around it for many, many hours after races or when he's at work. And this is back when, those original units were like an old Nissan hut down the other side. So it was interesting times, but never really... never really one thing that it was like, I'm definitely going to do this. This is the job I want to do.
But you loved motorsport. You loved F1, presumably, the racing, the buzz of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the buzz, the adrenaline side of things, the competitive side of things is what, that's in my makeup. I've always been competitive and continue to be that way. You just ask my kids, and that's.
Are you that parent at sports day that has to win? we are going to win.
I might go with my trainers on already.
You might do some stretching beforehand. Okay, I'm taking this seriously.
Yeah.
Don't let me down, son.
Yeah. But I was, fortunate enough to work with my father when we first started Delta. My father's business had moved off the circuit onto his own premises, which is literally just across the road. And we spent a couple of years there when we did the GP Masters work. It was all designed and built out of his place.
Wow.
And then we moved on to site, and he started doing his work out of us, which was mainly around, at that point, sort of classic car restoration and build and some special projects. But in the early days, it was all around saloon car work, running people's cars for them, building them for them. So it was good, and really sort of shaped my mum and my dad, because it was they ran the business together, and it was really them that sort of shaped the way I am now. But in them running their own business, it was a good lesson for me. Yeah. Obviously not a good enough one, because I still went into it myself. But it was a good education in terms of the challenges involved, and the commitment that it was for them, and is for all of us that take that plunge.
What was that like when, so just talking about taking the plunge, just sparks a question. So the moment when, 2002, Reynard, obviously sort of closed the doors, as it were, and you then had sort of a very short stint at Oxford Racing, and then until 2005 you sort of opened Delta. What was that like opening? I'm really fascinated. What was that like opening a business?
Well, so the first bit, the Oxford Racing bit, was also myself and a couple of guys from Reynard.
Right.
The way that started was that Reynard had built cars for teams that basically suddenly they'd been cut off at the knees to be like, okay, well, who's going to support us now?
Yeah.
And my knowledge of the production of the vehicles was obviously pretty extensive with what I was doing there, and I teamed up with a couple of the guys from the drawing office, and we started a business that was there to service the teams in America still. So that's what Oxford Racing was.
So you already had clients from day one because you were looking after those that were Reynard, right?
So that bit of it was easy.
Yeah.
Because it was, we were almost gifted an opportunity.
Yeah, continuity.
Yeah. And then when we did that for a few years, it was like, well, then people stopped running Reynards because we did a development program, but we couldn't keep up with the Lola development. And more teams shifted across. So then you've got a greater number of cars, Lolas than Reynards, and suddenly they're winning. So people in Reynards are like, oh, I need one of them to win. So that was a sort of gifted opportunity. And actually went in 2004, actually went down and worked with Nick at the time, was down at a company called Piper Design in London. And they were doing a bit of motorsport and a bit of non-motorsport work. And I said, look, it's not really going anywhere for us. The guys that we teamed up with, one of them actually designs Grand Prix motorbikes, or did back then, and continues to do a lot of motorbike work now. And then one of them wanted to go into Formula One. So I was like, okay, well, what do I do now? So I did a year with Nick in London, and we decided that we would start our own business rather than travelling into London and running somebody else's. And it was, it was a bit of a risk. And, at that point we didn't have any customers. We just had some determination that we could make it work. And then, I guess you feel in that initial stage is that, well, I can always go back to working for somebody else.
Sure.
So you've got that, but you put a lot on the line. You've got, I was fortunate I didn't have family at the time when I started, so if it all went wrong, I was letting myself down, and no
one else is going to get affected.
Nobody else is going to get affected, so much other than the stress of it with my now wife. But yeah, it's a big step into the unknown for people, as you know yourself. But
15 years later, though, you're here. It's
absolutely.
been a good journey.
I mean, fortunate, Nick and I complement each other in terms of our skills very well, and also, when one of us is, and that's I think the biggest difference is the fact that for us in business, there is two of us. It's not just all on one. And when we equally work as hard as each other. And when one of us is having a bad time, the other one's there to help you along. So I think we're really lucky that there is two of us rather than just one of us and it all dumped on one. But regardless, it's a big step. And as we continue to grow now, when we started, I mean, when we did the first project, we were lucky. We had, because I owned the Champ Car tooling for the chassis and nose box, we won a project called to do a load of new cars for a new series called Grand Prix Masters, the ex-Formula One drivers in modern day cars, and that was because we had a chassis to start with. Problem was we only had 5 months to modify the chassis tooling because there was IP involved that we didn't own, and make a whole new car.
5 months.
5 months, to the point we had to be on the grid in Kyalami with 15 cars to a
Wow.
public. It was international TV, live on BBC, and so yeah, we spent, and there was at its peak.
Did you fulfil that?
We did, yeah.
There we are.
Yeah, and we spent a lot of time sleeping in our chairs. It's,
Sure.
It's we did a timing plan, and it was sort of taller than Nick and thinner than him. And for those of you that know him, it's he's not a big guy. So that was pretty scary, but it was just one of those. It's just what we do, really. It's just one of those challenges that you go after it, and then you want to do it and push yourself.
Yeah.
And yeah, great opportunity. Gave us a platform for the business.
And here we are. Simon, fantastic. Thank you so much for that. I typically close off the interview with 3 final questions, the first of which I think we've already covered off, making a presumption. And that question is normally about any sort of funny or embarrassing stories, personally or professionally. And so I'm predicting that the sort of now infamous battery fire is probably that story.
It's certainly on the embarrassing side, but we don't, we don't hide away from it. It taught us a lesson.
Yes.
And I think these things are, they're there for that, and you've got to take them for that. It would have been easy for us to fold at that point, but you've got to take on board what happened and go again where you can. But yeah, that was pretty embarrassing and painful.
But you've learned from it, which is the point of me always asking these questions. Is there a learning piece in there for all of us, which was actually just metaphorically at a moment where you could potentially be at your lowest, professionally or personally. Actually, it's not the end, and you just got to pick yourself up, dust yourself down, as it were.
Yeah.
Pull your socks up and look at it as, okay, how can we learn from this? And you guys clearly did.
Yeah.
Went on to be very successful with obviously completing that project, and many years later, here we are doing this interview. So I think for those listening, I think there's the story.
Yeah.
Which is the point. So great. Thanks for sharing that. Before I get on to the very last question, actually, I'm going to ask there's going to be a couple more questions because I've had another one in my head. Is there anything I haven't covered off? Anything you want to talk about whilst we've got you on air? Anyone you want to talk about?
No, I think that we're in a changing environment.
Sure.
I think there's lots of challenges for the business. And with our growth, when we started off really small and gradually stepped up, we're now sort of over 40 people. There's new pressures all the time, and I think in anyone who's got a small business, thinking they it's tough. It is, and it will continue to be tough. But you got to keep going and keep looking ahead and what the future is. And we're, as Nick and I, both engineers, we're a little bit risk averse at times. So we're always cautious. We keep an eye on what we're spending.
Yes.
And when we take it very personally in terms of the growth and the future of the business. So it is hard, but it's also equally very rewarding. And we've been fortunate enough and continue to be fortunate to work with some great people and do some great projects. And we want to keep doing that with all of the battery systems work we do and control systems work. It keeps bringing in these interesting projects. So as an engineer, it's great. Keeps you interested. Yeah. What would, if you were to look back, you've got the 25-year career, starting off at Reynard through to now Delta. If you were to sort of look back and talk to your younger self with less, as you would define yourself, less stress, Yeah.
What would you say if you were to coach yourself back then? What was the one thing that you'd sort of say to yourself?
I think it was we there's probably areas where we could have been a little bit more bolshy, a little bit more out there. There's obviously plenty of people that are very good at selling themselves, and the business doesn't always meet up to it. We're probably slightly the other way, that the business is probably better than we are out there telling people about it. But that's our character, and I think that would be the only thing, mainly from our side and my side in particular, would be, okay, well, we've got to have the confidence to push even more, to be out there a little bit more.
It's clearly working, though. You know, what you're already doing is clearly working. The business is coming in, the projects are here.
Yeah, I mean, we'll just try and keep it real, really, for people. And I think, you know, being honest about what you are and what you're not is really important.
Well, your authenticity comes across without a doubt as a business and as an individual. So I think, you know, that's what people buy, right? People are buying you and the team, and you know. Yeah,
we hope so. It doesn't always work out that way, but you know, I think as you look back, there's always mistakes made, and you know, I don't think there's too much. I often think that, if I knew then what I know now, then obviously we'd be better off. But you know, it's you know, I was fortunate to work with my dad for a few years, but then, you know, I saw what challenges life has. So, you know, I lost him to cancer a number of years ago, and that just reminds you of, okay, you need to take some perspective, really, in what you're doing. And yeah, we're dedicated to work, but there's other things as well. You know, you can't.
There's life out there.
There's life out there. You know, don't forget your family, and don't lose touch, because you never really know. Especially nowadays, it seems a lot more prominent than what it did. But yeah, you just take a bit of perspective every now and again.
I have nothing else to add to that, and I don't want to ask any more questions. I think that's a lovely way to end the interview. Remembering family.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
So thanks for coming on. I'd love to have you back on the show in seasons in the future, another year or so. And we also still need to get on Mr. Kieran Salter. So if he's listening to this, Kieran, I'm still going to keep emailing you occasionally to get you on the show. I've managed to get Simon, so it's your turn next. But Simon, thank you for coming on. Great meeting you.
No problem. Cheers, Chris.
The Inside Silverstone podcast is produced by the team at Longhurst for the benefit of those with a passion for all things tech, engineering and innovation. For more information, please visit longhurst.co.uk/Inside Silverstone, whilst also remembering to give us a 5 out of 5 star rating on iTunes. Please note that neither Chris Broome or Longhurst work for Silverstone Park, Silverstone Circuit or Silverstone Technology Cluster.